So, Paterson Mayor Sayegh, thank you so much for joining us today, sir.
Thank you, Max.
I'd like to ask you first about COVID-19, Mayor, and how has it impacted your city, and what is your city's most immediate need right now?
Well, I'm proud to say that Paterson has been leading from the front during the pandemic, whether it was through contact tracing, which was featured in the New York Times, or ordering an ample supply of PPE so that not only our first responders had enough, but we could donate to the hospital, which was in dire need last year. So that was also featured in the New York Times. We've also done widespread testing, and now we've just been vaccinating as many people as possible. In fact, we started in earnest December 28th, and we haven't stopped. Although there have been some stumbling blocks. Just recently with the announcement that the Johnson & Johnson vaccine has to be put on hold, that hurt us because we had to cancel our session yesterday. So we had to turn people away, tell them to go home, but we quickly pivoted. We got about a 700 dose supply of Moderna, and today we were vaccinating away, and we partnered with St. Joseph's Hospital. We're getting Pfizer as well. They're going to be administering the doses. We're going to provide the staff as far as nurses are concerned. So what we've learned through this is that you got to call audibles, right? And you got to learn how to pivot quickly, and everything is amplified. everything. It's not easy being a mayor. It's not easy being an executive in this environment. There was a recent New York Times article, actually it appeared in Sunday's edition, where there's a lot of mayors experiencing burnout and they're quitting. I'm not one of those.
Mayor, you actually had COVID-19. Any lingering effects from the virus?
No, I actually lost my sense of smell. I had pneumonia, didn't know about it until I was x-rayed. I infected my wife, my poor wife. One of my daughters in a serology test turned out that she had the antibodies as well. But I'm glad to say I'm fully vaccinated. Ironically enough, I have the Johnson & Johnson, but I feel fine.
Okay, well, that's great to hear. And what are you sensing from your constituents about their comfort level with the vaccine? And is the city undertaking any kind of public education on that front?
We had an issue early on with African American males being hesitant, and I chalked that up to the Tuskegee tragedy from 1932 to 1972, where African American males were duped and they were injected with syphilis, and it was supposed to be like a public health awareness program, and it was anything but. So we were seeing at our pod, the point of dispensing at International High School, very few African American males. So I recruited some African American leaders of influence. I actually got my good friend, former New York Giants superstar Leonard Marshall. We did a press conference. And then Harold Reynolds from the MLB network, he played for the Seattle Mariners. He was an all-star in his own right. We filmed the commercial. And the theme was, I am not throwing away my shot, inspired by the Hamilton musical.
Right.
And we punctuated by saying, I'm not throwing away my shot, and neither should you. So we're really trying to ratchet up efforts to get more African-American males to get vaccinated. We had 2 FEMA sites, community-based pop-up sites. We had one at a Black Baptist church. We did relatively well there. And then we had one at a Catholic church, but we saw a large number of Latinos. I would say a vast majority of the people getting vaccinated in Paterson are Latino.
Any pressing needs in terms of resources from the state or from the feds at this particular juncture?
We need more vaccines, Max. Like I said, we got 0 Johnson & Johnson. That was announced last week. And then just yesterday, they were saying, well, you can't even use what we have. And we had some like 600 doses in reserve. So I'm grateful to the governor's office because we quickly pivoted. We got our Moderna, but that requires 2 shots. And it poses a problem because the Johnson & Johnson was supposed to be the game changer, because we can go into people who are homebound, their houses, and we could 1 visitation, 1 vaccination. And then we were inoculating our homeless population. We can't do that right now. And we were going to recovery centers too, because the 1 dose really helps. It does, because they're hard to reach.
Right.
And they're not going to come to us, and it's hard to go back to them.
Understood. Mayor, I'd like to just talk a little bit about legalized marijuana and how it has impacted your police force's duties in Paterson. What are you seeing? Upside, downside? Any thoughts?
All right, okay, we're going to have to view this from a number of different aspects. 1, revenue, yes, it will help, because we've had a dispensary for medical marijuana here for over a year. We were one of 6 municipalities in the state that was granted a license for a company to operate, and that company's Rise Dispensary. They operate under the auspices of GTI, Green Thumb Industries. They're doing very well. A vast majority of their employees are from Paterson. On top of what they already pay, we implemented a 2% transfer tax. So we're generating some revenue that we didn't have earlier. As far as policing is concerned, my public safety director is not necessarily 100% in support. He's saying it does make the job of a cop a little bit more difficult.
You're able to detect a potential stop easier with marijuana being illegal, clearly. Is that his primary concern?
And in those stops, sometimes it would yield a illegal firearm.
Understood.
And then you can make an arrest.
Right, right. Maybe we could talk a little bit about violent crime in the city. You've had a number of shootings and some killings. Any change in the strategy right now to make the city safer?
Yeah, I mean, you'd be hard pressed to find anyone that wouldn't say this is a byproduct of the pandemic, because it's created so much desperation, so much despair. It's driven up the demand for drugs.
Right.
And unfortunately, a lot of these shootings revolve around narcotics. Just yesterday, we arrested 15 people. We got 3 guns in 3 hours. In January, we have a gun suppression program. January, we confiscated 21 guns. In February, we got 26 guns. In March, in the span of 4 hours, we got 3 guns. We've seized over 60 guns thus far, hitherto, April 14th. Last year, got 200. So we are on pace to get even more. And then we were looking at the data. We were getting more daylight shootings. So we said, okay, we got to get foot patrols out there. So we hired more police officers. And now, in earnest, 8 a.m. to about 7 p.m. before it gets dark, we have foot patrols. And then we have what's called an extra patrol initiative at night with a gun suppression program. But I can assure you, we're doing everything we can to seize those guns. And now we're going to really ratchet up our efforts to get the shooters off the streets. Because there are not many shooters. There's a small percentage of the population that's committing these violent crimes, and we're going to get them. But it hurts my heart when I read about what happens in New York, because their violent crime is on the rise in Chicago and Houston and other places. But Max, you also got to look at mid-sized cities like Paterson. Albany's had this issue. Syracuse has had this issue. There are a number of cities in New Jersey that have had this issue. Rockford, Illinois, right outside of Chicago, 140,000 plus residents, a population similar to ours. They saw a record number of homicides and shootings as well last year. So there's something in the air, unfortunately.
Mayor, what about homelessness? Are you experiencing?
Yes, we are. And I'll tell you what's exacerbating the situation. We have shelters, but because of COVID-19 restrictions, whereas in the past we can accommodate, let's say 40 people, we cannot have large congregations. So now it's 20. So you cut it in half and now more people are on the street.
I'd like to ask you a little bit about the American Rescue Plan. It's a federal plan championed by the president. And if I read the numbers correctly from the offices of Senators Menendez and Booker, Paterson is supposed to be getting almost $64 million. Any idea of whether that's in fact true, and what would you do with that money?
As far as I know, it is accurate information, so I wouldn't chalk it up to fake news, Max. Right. I will tell you we're waiting on the guidelines, but we have a few projects that we'd like to pursue. Some of them are infrastructure projects. Road resurfacing is very important, especially with the winter we've had, so many potholes on the streets. And we don't just want to do patchwork. We want to have something permanent as far as repaving is concerned. And then obviously we've incurred overtime costs. There's money involved with redeploying employees as well. So we needed this revenue. And I'm proud to say that throughout this entire crucible, we didn't have to lay anyone off, nor did we have to impose any unpaid furloughs on employees.
Sir, I'd like to ask you a little bit about the children of Paterson. You do have virtual learning going on in Paterson. They're not back in the schools. There's not a hybrid plan, as far as I know. What is your sense of the mental health of the students? And is there any kind of a plan underway by the city partnering with the schools, anything in that regard?
Well, it's a serious concern of mine. In fact, we were able to use $3.8 million in CARES Act money to purchase supplies for the school district to reopen, but unfortunately they decided they're not going to go back this year. So we got them PPE, we got them Promethean boards, we got the laptops for the students. We did whatever we could to get them back in school. But yes, we are going to partner with the school district. We're applying for mental health grants, which will become available, more readily available, considering the environment that we're living in. And we understand that it has taken it's exacted a heavy toll on the mental health of not just the students, but their parents as well. Right. And Max, I also want to point out, we are making arrests with guns, and these young people are at 15, 16 years old. So being out of school doesn't help. And then also being out of work for some parents doesn't help either.
What's the strategy going forward?
So the strategy going forward is we got to make sure that in September, we get these students back into school, safely back into school, and hopefully we can recover whatever learning was lost. But I just want to point out the fact that the city, we've done our part to make sure that they can go back into those buildings.
Right. Mayor, just a little bit about the politics of the city. So you were a long-standing councilman before you were mayor, and you know that Paterson is notorious for the council clashing with the mayor, and certainly now is no different. You have your longtime rival who was indicted for fraud and has pled not guilty. But do the two of you, this is Alex Mendez, do the two of you see a way to work together? Have you actually been able to talk? And are you, despite the obvious, which is the thought that he might run citywide again, are you able to see any common ground throughout this terrible political turmoil?
It's interesting that you would use the term common ground, because we had a Zoom session early on. Yeah. And I talked about common ground, and one was body cameras. He supported it. And now for the first time in the history of Paterson, police officers are wearing body cameras. Then there's the Mayors for a Guaranteed Income initiative that I was espousing. He supported it. So now 110 randomly selected residents of Paterson will receive $400 a month as a part of this program, pilot program, I might add. So he supported that as well. And then we have a number of projects that are coming down the pike, park projects to improve them. Lou Costello Memorial Park, $1.2 million to renovate it, and also for the first time have play space to accommodate children with special needs. So I'd like to think you would support something like that. And today we broke ground on Hinchliffe Stadium. It's been fallow for nearly 24 years, right, and it is one of only 2 stadiums still standing that hosted Negro League games. And today we had CC Sabathia, Willie Randolph, Harold Reynolds, Larry Doby Jr. In attendance as we broke ground.
What's your vision for the stadium, Mayor?
So my vision for the stadium is obviously to have our youth leverage it. It will be multi-purpose. Baseball, true to its roots, football, and obviously we have a population that plays soccer. So we have to accommodate individuals who enjoy playing football, the other football.
Understood.
The football that they actually use their feet.
Right, of course. I'd just like to ask you 2 more questions if I could. So
thanks, Max.
We had a case of voter fraud in Paterson that was a national story, and the president talked about it and certainly tweeted about it. And former president, pardon me, but Governor Phil Murphy just initiated a number of voting reforms in New Jersey. Did any of those impact Paterson, and do you have any kind of confidence going forward that we won't see a repetition of the kind of voter fraud that has landed some of these guys in hot water?
Max, I told you this before, as far as Donald Trump is concerned, if you're going to tweet about Paterson, at least spell it right, 1 T, right? And yes, we made national headlines, CNN, all types of outlets and networks, and just not the type of media attention that we want in the city. And I have to give Governor Murphy credit. Obviously, we do want to make it more accessible. And one thing I've always agreed with, they call this element the souls to the polls. I like a pastor getting up in front of his or her congregation and saying, okay, it's Sunday. We have an obligation. It's a part of the social gospel. Let's get in a van, get in your car, and let's vote early. It worked for President Obama. I'm sure it worked for President Biden in the most recent election. So that's one thing I do agree with. And then having these drop boxes where cameras are, so you don't have any tomfoolery, as you would say, or skullduggery to dig down deep into your vast reservoir of vocabulary words.
So you feel more confident, but not completely confident?
No, I'm cautiously confident. How about that?
Got it. Okay. And
we're still wounded. We still have scars, Max.
Pardon me?
We still have some scars here, right?
Sure, of course. But in the vein of cautious confidence, are you able to say anything about your future plans? Are you looking to run again for mayor of Paterson?
I am gonna. I have not made an announcement. What I have to do is manage through this pandemic first. So I feel like once we turn the corner, and that's not too far away. We've come a long way. We still have a little way to go. Then I can really ramp up my electioneering efforts.
Understood.
Yes, Mayor. And it's been difficult to raise money, quite frankly. I've had a number of fundraisers via Zoom, but they're not the same. And you know me, I like the glad hand and slap people on the back, and I'm very demonstrative and effusive. So this has certainly been somewhat of a setback as far as my histrionics are concerned.
Have you even been able to go into the brownstone lately, which is where you have?
I used to be in the brownstone maybe 5 times a week.
Right.
I've probably been there 5 times in the last year.
Yeah. Well, I hope to see you there soon, and certainly in lieu of seeing you in person, maybe we can talk again here real soon. And thank you so much, Mayor, for your time.
Max, it's always a pleasure. The constant professional, and God bless your family,
Likewise,
especially your beautiful daughter.
Thank you very much.